Welcome everybody. My name is Dr. Shmuel Shields. I'm a nutritionist, and we are continuing with our health series, our Guard Your Health series. These are short series that we hope to continue through part of the winter. And the topic today I'm very excited about. I think it's a very, very important topic, and I hope everybody will get a lot out of it. We're basically going to just try to introduce the topic today. Before I do that, I just want to express my hakaras hatov to the Rebbeinu Shalom for giving me a chance to reach a wider audience and get hopefully a good message across. And I want to express hakaras hatov to the Chazak organization and to Torah Anytime, who do tremendous things for the Jewish community, as we all know. We don't even have to say more than that. Anyway, the topic we're going to talk about today is called Healthier Kids for Flu Season and Beyond. I just want to mention, if there are any comments or questions or feedback on this particular presentation today, please direct them to events@chazak.org. Again, that's events, E-V-E-N-T-S, at Chazak, CHAZAQ.org. Okay, so I want to start off by just saying we have a mitzvah in the Torah, Ushamartem mi'od lenafshosechem. We should guard our health exceedingly. We should be very careful with our health. And as a friend of mine, his name is Rabbi Dr. Moshe Miller, pointed out to me, there are very few mitzvahs where the Torah goes out of its way to use the word ma'od. Ushamartem mi'od lenafshosechem. We should guard ourselves exceedingly. We should be very careful with our health. And I think this is a very important point. And having said that, I want to talk about the health of children. Some of you heard people say the following. They listen to a piece of news, they get up in the morning, they read a piece of news, they hear a piece of news, and they'll just comment by saying, nothing shocks me anymore. Nothing shocks me anymore. I sometimes say that. We live in a world today where we're so exposed to so many things, and the media and all the methods that we have to bring news to us today, we're constantly being bombarded with shocking things, with horrific things. The news doesn't talk about good things that happen in the world. It's always the terrible things. But many people have developed an attitude that nothing shocks them anymore. Well, I'm going to tell you something that shocks me. The deterioration of the health of children. It's shocking to see children who should be healthy and well, and we're seeing for many years now a rapid deterioration in their health. And I think there are things that we could do about it, but it's going to take a communal effort, family effort, a real grassroots effort to change this picture. So I'm going to ask the listening audience, I'm going to list a few things here, and I want you to think about what all these things have in common, or maybe what is the common denominator, or possibly a contributing factor or a consequence of some of these things. Root canals, obesity, elevated lipid levels, elevated cholesterol levels, triglyceride levels, elevated blood sugar levels, hyperactivity, mood swings, concentration issues, compromised immunity, and frequent cold, flu, strep, and ear infections. So one of the things I want to suggest, maybe you came up with the same thing, one of the common denominators to almost all of these conditions I mentioned is foods. Foods that we eat, things that we use to nourish our body. If we are not using the right kind of foods on a regular basis, we could make these conditions worse. We can contribute to these conditions that I mentioned, and there's probably a host more, but I'm just giving you a little picture here of how foods can affect us. And I know food and diet and nutrition is not the only part of the puzzle here, but it's certainly a significant contributory piece that has to be addressed, and oftentimes it's taken very lightly. and it's not really addressed properly. And that's really the focus of these series today, is to try to make us more aware. I think most people know that food plays some role in our well-being and our health, but sometimes we just don't think about it. We sort of kind of take it for granted, and we don't really address it the way it really needs to be addressed. So what is the problem today with the foods, and how have the food choices affected the health of children? Again, all of these conditions I mentioned, from root canals to obesity to colds, flu, strep, ear infections, concentration issues, high cholesterol levels, are seen in children every single day by pediatricians throughout the country. Okay, these are not isolated things. These are conditions that, if I had somebody come into my office and they told me, oh, I don't feel so good today, I just had a root canal, and the guy was 47 years old, so I wouldn't flinch. But when a 7-year-old comes in and says, and the parent might say to me, oh, Shlomo just came from the dentist, he had a root canal, that still shocks me. Or if a child, an 8 or a 9 or a 10 or 11, 12-year-old child, has an elevated cholesterol level, those are things we normally don't see until maybe a person is, middle-aged. But we see this routinely today. So something is very wrong. Everybody's got to take a step back and has to recognize the consequences here, because these kind of conditions seen in children at such young ages are rapidly accelerating the disease pathway. And the onset of catastrophic illnesses is being accelerated when you're seeing health issues in children this age. So as a nutritionist and as a health educator, I've always seen myself playing more of a preventive role. I believe strongly in prevention, and I also feel that's the litchatchila, prevention and taking steps to prevent problems, I think is the Torah hashkafa, and I think there are things that we definitely can do to address those issues. So I want to see if I can give you maybe some thoughts today, and then we're going to continue with this. We'll probably have a few other upcoming presentations on this to give you, and again, I don't want to just talk theoretically, I want to give practical suggestions that can be implemented. And I will say, it is an uphill battle. We're struggling against a lot of things. I'm going to talk about some of those things now, but look what's at stake here. The health of our children, and even our own health and our family's health and well-being. So I think these ideas are not just for children. Children are just small adults, but they're really for everybody. And everybody has to be involved in trying to change the picture here. So we're dealing with processed foods. At the turn of the century, only about 10% of our foods were processed. And currently, approximately 90% of our foods are processed. So what does that mean? Processing usually means essential nutrients. The food chain has been disturbed in some way. Nutrients have been stripped away. Foods are grown and on soils that may not be as good as they once were or could be. We are feeding a lot of people, and methods have come into play to maybe make that more expedient. But there have been consequences because of that. So all I could tell you is the foods have been processed, important nutrients have been stripped out of the foods. And then other ingredients have been added into the foods in the course of processing our foods. Sugar, artificial coloring, flavorings, dyes, hydrogenated oils. These are all harmful ingredients, and it's probably the amounts that make it even more compelling, because the amounts are extraordinary today, extraordinary. I could tell you, if we went back to the 1600s when the Pilgrims first came to this country, the average person back then was consuming about 7 pounds of sugar annually. Today, the average person is consuming somewhere between 125 and 150 pounds of sugar a year. And a lot of my patients will tell me, but I don't use any sugar. I don't add any sugar. But I tell them, if you look at your labels and you look at grams of sugar, on even a glass of juice, there could be 28 or 30 grams of sugar. Every 4 grams of sugar equals a teaspoon. So a person could drink a glass of juice and get 6 or 7 teaspoons of sugar right there. And then he goes for a fruit-flavored yogurt with another 28 grams of sugar, and there's another 6 or 7 teaspoons of sugar there. And as the day goes on, and there are snacks and other meals, and then there's a soda with lunch with another 10 grams of sugar, by the end of the day, the person could be taking in 30, 25, 30, 40 teaspoons of sugar in one day. Okay, just setting the stage here. I know there are a lot of issues to talk about, but I just want to give you a little a little taste, a little feel for what we're dealing with today. And then, as I mentioned earlier, frequency and amounts make a big difference. You know, the jelly donut once a year for Hanukkah, I could live with that. You know, a Rosh Chodesh party with some reasonable snacks once a month, okay? But that's not what it's like. It's an inundation. It's like a mabul of bad food choices, poor snacks, harmful ingredients. There's always an occasion, there's always a reason, and it's really, it boils down to frequency and amounts. In moderation, some of these things, you know, can fit in. We will talk about rewarding children possibly in different ways. Okay, so we have some of those issues. We also have what I call a hijacking of the taste buds. Once a kid, or even an adult, but we're talking about kids now, sits down to that burger or that fried chicken or the French fries, fried foods, that kind of combination, it's very hard to compete when you offer fresh produce or a salad or fruits or vegetables, when you're competing against either very sugary, you know, things, concentrated sugars, refined sugars that affect the brain, affect receptor centers in the brain, pleasure centers in the brain, set up addictive qualities. And then just the taste of fried foods, you know, it's very appealing. They taste good. But then you set up a very difficult scenario for eating healthier food that aren't prepared or cooked that way, because the taste buds have literally been hijacked, and sometimes addictions develop, and so on. So we as I said, it's an uphill battle, but I think it's winnable, or it's certainly at least modifiable, and those are the things I think we have to try to work with. Anyway, everything I've spoken about so far sets the stage for nutritional deficiencies. And once the stage has been set for nutritional deficiencies, then we open the door to a host of potential problems. Nutritional deficiencies mean a compromised immune system. A compromised immune system means we become more prone to colds, flu, strep, ear infections, and the list goes on. A compromised immune system also means, besides those kind of things, the immune system is protecting us against all types of harmful invaders, and even against cancer cells. So we want an optimal working immune system. If you are deficient in things like vitamin E or vitamin C or vitamin D or selenium or magnesium, or there are many, many nutrients, what we call micro and macronutrients, that affect the immune system. The immune system doesn't have those nutrients. It may not be able to build the specialized cells that the immune system is made up of, the antibodies that it has to make to deal with invading microorganisms. So as Louis Pasteur, that French, I think a French biologist who lived a couple of hundred years ago, who gave us the germ theory before he passed away, on his deathbed, he said the following: the germ is nothing, the terrain is everything. Meaning the integrity of our inner health, our immune health, could deal very effectively with organisms, microorganisms and bacteria and viruses and so on and so forth, provided that it's working in an optimal way. You're giving your immune system the best chance to fight these kind of things. Okay, anyway, having said that, I just want to talk a little bit about behavioral issues and the role that food and nutrients play there. So many children, as we all know, are suffering today from inability to concentrate, hyperactivity, ADD, ADHD, all sorts of terms that children have been labeled with. And for some of these children, again, I'm not saying this is a simple issue, and there are many factors that are involved here, but for a certain percentage of children, the kind of snacks and beverages and foods that they're consuming on a regular basis could possibly be at the cause of some of these problems, or at the very least, certainly making these conditions worse. Again, if you have a child that has had to have a root canal, you don't want that child to have another root canal. If you have a child that's hyperactive, you don't want he or she to become more hyperactive, or you don't want concentration issues to get worse. But if we don't address some of the underlying cause or contributing factors, they could potentially get worse. And that's really what I'm trying to stress today, that there are ways to address many of these issues and possibly, hopefully, with the Rebbeinu Shlem's help, improve these issues and make them better, and maybe even prevent problems down the road. So those are some of the things that this series is going to get into. I hope that in some upcoming series I have planned, we'll try to give some more practical ideas and solutions and suggestions to promote better health in our children and our families, and hopefully address some of these issues. And again, it's all of us have to do our part. And I want to thank you again for listening to this introduction. And I want to talk more about some very practical and important ways that we can maybe make some changes. So stay tuned. We will continue in Mirz Hashem with this series. And again, if you if you have any questions, any comments, any feedback, please address them to events@chazak.org. And Chazak is spelled CHAZAQ. Events@chazak.org. Thank you again for listening. Have a great day.